So this is the fifth video lecture on the topic of young adulthood. In this lecture, I want to talk about some theories of personality development and get into some of the significant social aspects of young adulthood. What this slide offers is some different theories of personality development, and they all kind of have some things in common. Thinking back to what you know about personality, thinking back to general psychology when we were talking about, or in the idea that personality is defined as patterns of thoughts and behaviors that are consistent across time and place. Well, these theories then suggest that how our patterns of thoughts and feelings develop, how they become consistent, is influenced by different stages in life. Now, as way back in chapter 1, when we were talking about, what exactly human growth and development is about, when I emphasized the idea of normative development, and these are just different ways of integrating the notion of normative events in a culture, or what a culture considers to be normal, into the idea that our personalities are solidifying in our young adulthood. So the notion that the patterns of thoughts and behavior become more consistent and more stable in early adulthood, and what is the relationship to the doing things in the normative sequence of events. So you have something called normative stage model, which basically says that our personality is influenced by if we proceeded through the different stages of the life course as the rest of the culture does. So in other words, 19 years old, you graduate, or you just graduated from high school, you go to college, you get a degree, you get a job, you get married, you get pregnant. Those are the normative stages. But when we do things out of sequence, or what is sometimes called off time, that can influence how you think about how you think your personality, right? So your patterns of thoughts and behavior that are consistent across time. So one thing that's significant that's supposed to happen in this stage of life is one of Erikson's crisis. And I've asked you many questions about, Erikson, his crisis model, but the crisis of early adulthood is between intimacy and isolation. In other words, this is the time in life where it's most common for people to pair bond. It's most common for people to get married, to get engaged, right? That's what is normally happening. So as if we come through our young adulthood, right, are we going to choose to turn towards someone and, quote, fuse our identity, or are we going to remain in isolation and not fuse our identity, right? And how we do that, or the outcome of that crisis, will influence our personality. So let me give you an example that's not exactly about crisis and identity, but it is about this normative stage model, and how when we do things out of order, or when we do things that are normative, right, it'll have or not normative, it affects our personality development. I'm going to use sort of myself as an example. My daughter's experiences has been normative. She graduated high school. She lived at home for the first year. She moved out the second year. She's in her fourth year of college. She's going to graduate college and wants to move to Kansas City, right? My early adulthood was not normative. It was off time. I went to college. I became pregnant. I became married, and then I continued on in graduate school. Right? One of the things that is different between she and I is our attitude towards going to college. For her, going to college is a barrier to things that she wants to do. She wants to get her certification in yoga. She wants to move to Kansas City. She doesn't want to have to work so hard. She just wants to get a job and enjoy herself. But for me, going to college was my liberation, because at home, I was a poor mother, right? When none of my friends were mothers. For me, going to college was the highest social status I had. That was how my future was. That was my future ambition, right? So for me, I thrived on going to college, because that was how I was going to improve my life. For her, college is the barrier to the life that she already wants to lead. So when we think about personality developments, our attitudes and feelings that are consistent, one of the differences between she and I is our attitude towards higher education and if we do things on time. So I hope that makes some sense. Okay, I can think of some other examples. Life structure model is similar, except it conceptualizes life as being these different structures. So you go from a structure where you're living at home and you're a teenager to now you focus on your college, now you focus on career, now you focus on your kids. And so it's sort of the idea that we turn our attention towards those differing structures in our life. Are those structures family? Are they career? Are they education? Right? And again, one of the themes that runs through all of these are what is normal for people at that particular time. And then we surround ourselves by people who are doing similar things. It's also really important to keep in mind that when I talk about this also in the sociology class too, like all of this is socially determined. All of this is a social construction. There's really no such thing as a right way to do things. But when we do things like everyone else, we have a higher sort of well-being. It's easier because everyone else is doing it. When we do things off time, when we do things out of sequence, it may be harder for us, right? Because we may not have anyone that understands us. We may be doing it all alone, whatever, might not be resources. Okay, and then the last one, what's this one say? Timing of events model. So this one says, again, very similar to these others. Basically, if the events of our life, so going to college, getting married, having children, having a career, blah, 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 right? When they occur, in what sequence they occur, how old I am when they occur, right? And then what's referred to as the social clock. When does society say it's acceptable? All right, when does society say it's acceptable for a woman to go to college, right? I know I've had students who are, in their 40s before they go to college, and they'll comment about how it's kind of weird for them, right? So the social clock says that when is it normative for women to go to college? Well, it's normative at 19. It's not necessarily so normative at 38. They do fine, but there is this awareness or this sensitivity that their experiences are different because because of the social clock, right? I guess that's what I'm trying to say. The social clock model is usually applied more to women. And I think this has to do with some gender norms and gendered expectations around probably childbirth. And in general, women are expected to follow some fairly rigid life trajectory guidelines, right? So what's this one? This one sort of emphasizes this idea of a social clock too, that a woman's social clock, right? The sequence that she takes affect her career, or it's influenced by what kind of career she wants. It's influenced by if she's holding traditional gender roles. If she follows that sequence, it may inform her overall life satisfaction. And again, we've got intimacy versus isolation, all of these things. Okay, I think that's all. Let's shift from material to psychological. So the shift from things to connections happens in this stage of the life course too. Okay, a couple other things I want to talk about: friendship. And then when I come back in the next one, I'll talk about some of the theories on love. Some of this comes from your textbook, but the rules over here on friendship, I stuck in from another resource. But the idea of stages of a relationship, because this is a stage of life course that we're pair bonding, right? It's just really, there's no exam question. It's just kind of interesting to think about. I really like the rules of friendship because I find friendships to be kind of a challenge. They're a lot of work. But if you look at that list, they are a lot of work. Okay, I'm going to stop. And when I come back, I want to talk about love and some of the theories of love and how knowing your love language and your partner's love language can be advantageous.